But you remember the teacher that insulted you and called you a name, who called you a dullard. The lashes that were inflicted on your soul have lasted longer than physical pain. Hello, you're welcome to Higai's Chamber International. This is Still Waters Podcast, and I am Olasende Olubumi. We'll be discussing the subject of pain, emotional pain. We all know that pain is a part of life. According to the English dictionary, pain could be a localized or generalized unpleasant bodily sensation. That is when pain is physical. But when pain is emotional or is in the soul, it's a mental or emotional distress or suffering. There are things we can note very quickly when we talk about pain. Number one, pain is part of life. It's only the living that feels pain, not the dead. Number two is that pain, if untreated, can cause suffering. By now you know that if you have suffered pain from an injury, you know that if you neglect it, chances are that it's going to grow bigger and bigger. We also know that pain is also a signaling by the senses. Pain is an indicator that something is wrong. Oftentimes we institutionalize pain and say that pain is supposed to be necessary. No, many times pain is just a signal that something is out of place. All right? And as we know, pain can exist in the physical, that is in your body. Pain can exist in the soul. Of the two of them, the pain of the soul is deeper than physical pain. You probably don't remember how many strokes of cane your teacher in primary school gave to you. But you remember the teacher that insulted you and called you a name, who called you a dullard. The lashes that were inflicted on your soul have lasted longer than physical pain. And today's conversation actually revolves around the pain of the soul. The way we perceive or interpret pain is influenced by many factors. For example, culturally, men are not allowed to express their displeasure or discomfort in public. They tell them, oh, come on, man up, you are not supposed to cry. So there are issues that they are supposed to respond. The pain they feel, they ought to respond to it. But because they have been told that they are men, they are not allowed to cry. They literally numb themselves to it. And so things that really do hurt are not perceived as painful because they must be men by cultural standards. At other times, pain could arise as a result of a trade-off. And your perception of that pain oftentimes just helps you to go through it. By trade-off, rather, we mean, when you have to go through a grueling process because there is an achievement or some success waiting at the end of the tunnel. For example, a pregnant woman having gone through 9 months of carrying a baby that is growing bigger and bigger by the day. By the time she gets to the labor table, she just tells herself in another few minutes or hours, my baby will be here and the pain would disappear. I will forget the pain of pregnancy or childbirth. Or as a student, you're going through a course of study, the nights of study, having to go to classes, from sun up to sundown, running assignments through the weekend, not just having enough time for leisure, could be quite grueling and it could cause some pain, particularly if you are not used to it. But when you remember that at the end of it all, you will be crowned with success, there's a way it just keeps you going, all right? Another thing, our perception of pain can also be influenced by the seasons of life that are beyond our control. For example, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, okay? Moving from a familiar territory to uncharted territory, somewhere you're not familiar with, can cause pain, okay? Cultural shock, for example, when you relocate from one country to the other. The discomfort some people feel is so intense, they want to go back to where they are coming from, even if where they are, is perceived as greener pastures. And then, of course, you have the fourth, and this list is not in any way exhaustive. The fourth on the list for this conversation is unwarranted and unnecessary affliction. These are cases of pain that are caused by, domestic abuse, verbal abuse, toxic relationships, toxicity in the workplace, in the neighborhood, and so on and so forth. Addiction, whatever it is that causes pain that is avoidable, it's not a necessary part of life. That is to say, that pain could be a necessary part of life. And in many cases, that pain was not a necessary aspect of our lives. Now, we need to know that pain is real. Pain is real and it should not be ignored. Many of us have perfected the art of ignoring pain until it becomes so big, like the pink elephant in the room, that you cannot ignore, that it literally cripples your daily activities. And even then, many do not even realize at that point they need professional help. This is why we have counselors and people in the allied, counseling practice who can help you, like the psychologists and so on and so forth, healthcare, as the case may be. So the pain that you feel, as we mentioned earlier, is a sign that something is wrong. You are not supposed to get used to it or adjust to it. Pain must be addressed. You must trace it. You must identify it. You must face it. And then, of course, you need to fix it. Why? Why is it necessary to treat pain and not just ignore and hope it will go away? Because pain grows. Like every other aspect of life, things grow, and it includes pain. When pain grows, it becomes more, and it begins to affect and interfere with your daily life. In some cases, it starts to interfere with your productivity. All right? It starts to interfere with the way you react, the way you relate with people around you. And you begin to act like you are really, wounded emotionally. Pain does not go away unless you address it. Some people think, someone hurt me, someone did something that hurts me. Maybe if I forget about it. No, time does not heal, rather. Time only hides pain. So the best time to fix pain is immediately. We have mentioned already, if you leave pain untreated, it can change you. Have you ever stepped on a nail before? The waking moments of the pain that you feel, right up to the point when it's fully healed, you realize you were limping. Even when it comes to the matters of the soul, there is a way pain, when left untreated, can make a person limp. For example, someone who has suffered the pain of betrayal in relationships is likely to have problems trusting people. Such an individual will have problems opening up to others, have problems being vulnerable. So in a love relationship, for example, such an individual is going to have problems. And he or she is probably even wondering why. Their partner or spouse begins to wonder what the matter is, why this individual is acting a certain way. All right? These are the kind of things untreated pain can lead to. I have about 6 of them here. Number 1, it can lead to aggression, the pain of a wounded lion, where people literally charge at the things they shouldn't charge at, okay? You see a scenario, that reminds you of something that happened to you, back in the day, and you literally see red. You begin to charge at the person, although the intention was not what you thought it was. Let me give you a quick example. There are ladies who go into marriage fighting their mother's battles. They grew up to see their mother being abused, by their father. And so they grew up with that mentality that I'm not going to allow any man to treat me the same way my father treated my mom. And so they come into marriage already fighting, aggressive. The husband has not even made any advance towards abuse, but they already see red. Why? They are primed. Maybe I should use the expression over-primed to see anything that looks like what they saw, what they witnessed growing up as, some form of abuse. And they charge at it, like an angry bull. Another thing that pain can do is pain can subdue people. There are people, depending on their personality, their wiring, the culture of the day, pain can silence people. It can literally bury the potential. So it's not just silence. That silence there is not the silence of, peace. It's not the silence of, I give up, I resign. It's the silence of being subdued. Someone's potentials, someone's possibilities has been buried, in that pit of pain that has been dug. All right? And if that happens, it goes beyond just being silent. Many times, every other part of that person's life that should be a blessing to the world is silenced. Number 3, it could lead to the individual to, accepting trauma as normal. We see this a lot. In fact, it happens. Look around you. There are certain things we do to ourselves today that we consider normal. Why? It's happened too many times. we have embraced it and taken it as our own, that this is the normal way things should be. No, you shouldn't accept trauma as normal. For example, a man who cheats on his wife. We have had repeated cases through the centuries, through history of men cheating, and nothing being done about it. The trauma has been locked in so strong that in certain cultures, in certain circles, all right, it is seen that it is normal for men to cheat. Oh, for goodness sake, you're not a wild animal. You are not an animal. You should have some form of self-control. That's what differentiates you from an animal. Okay, but you see, in certain cultures, it's been absorbed. In fact, when the wife begins to agitate, they tell her, "What is it? You are being too aggressive. You to take it easy." We all know that's how men are. Trauma has been accepted as normal under such situations, and that's a terrible thing. Okay. Another thing that trauma can do is that trauma can lock into the mind, and it can become a mental disorder. Ever wondered why some mental disorders are, run through certain cultures? I'm not even going to call out any tribe right now, okay, because it's just going to come out as stray bullets, okay? But there are cultures, even where we live right here in this part of the world, that the reason for their behavior, you can tell it's trauma that has been locked into the mental, locked into their logic. Take, for example, a man who has suffered at the hands of women in one way or the other. The mother, or maybe lost the mother, had to live with an aunt. The aunt, abused him, domestically, okay, went on to live, tried to trust a woman in a love relationship. The woman cheated on her. After a while, if it is not treated, chances are that man is going to emerge telling you, "Shora fobirin," in English language, "Fear women." No. Okay, some of those things are actually expressions from somebody's trauma. All right, it can lock into the society as a way of living. We see this in discrimination, gender discrimination. We see this in racism, okay, where certain things have been embraced and accepted as normal. Okay, this, for example, the enslaved is inferior to the slave driver. Many times, even after the slavery is over, the enslaved still has to battle with the wrong mentality. Well, look at the scriptures. Israel was in captivity for 430 years in Egypt. And even though they were free from Egypt, Egypt was not free from them. They wandered in the desert with a slavery mentality. And that was why many of them could not make it to the free land called Canaan. Why? That land was reserved only for the free men, not men who were slaves. All right? Another point here is that the pain or the outcome of pain can develop into a generational pattern, something that will be handed over through the years, through the generations. For example, again, I'm coming back to that because it's one of the most common, the strange ideology that it is in the nature of a man to cheat. So we begin to embrace that, and when we see young boys getting up and they are beginning to show signs of such strange behavior, rather than call them to order, we just, we are flippant about it. We don't even realize how much damage this is causing to the society, all right? That it's okay to continue to tolerate such rubbish. Let me say it again, it's rubbish. Glory to God. Hallelujah. So if you have had chronic pain or protracted pain for so long, and you haven't done anything about it, chances are that you may not even know where to start from unless you see a professional. And that brings me to the importance of consulting, counseling, professional counselors, all right? Or people in allied areas, maybe a psychiatrist, a psychologist, as the case. Gone are the days when people, there's a stigma attached to mental. There's a lot happening in our days now. A lot is happening now. Too much for us to begin to pretend that we don't know that there are issues. We know that there are issues, and these issues need to be addressed. However, this conversation is actually aimed at people who already identified that there is some pain in their soul and can still do something about it before they would ever have to need the services of a professional. How do you treat pain? Number one, like every medical case, pain is a medical case, whether it is pain in the body or pain in the soul. So the first step is diagnosis, the ability to identify what the problem is. There are times when you can pick it out, especially when the incident is fresh, when the pain is still fresh in the memory, in the soul. The longer it takes, the more complicated it gets. Just the same way the longer pain gets, the more complications would arise because of that pain. If the individual is not careful, he or she might not even remember anymore what is responsible. I read a story once, about a man who kept complaining of headache for several. He had done everything, taken all the analgesics, until his doctor took him for a scan. I said, let us check what is wrong. And then they saw something in his jaw. There was an iron blade that was locked up in his jaw. What happened? About 2 years before that time, he got into a fight with someone who wanted to rob him. In the process, that person stabbed him, and a part of that knife was left in his jaw. He didn't know. So that was what was causing the pain until that thing was removed. Now think about it. What if the diagnosis was not made? He will probably spend the rest of his life treating headache, persistent chronic headache, without realizing that there was a troubling factor. So the first thing is to identify what is the problem. There are times when you can pick it. There are times you need the help of a counseling professional to help you identify the source of pain. Now, there's something beautiful about diagnosis. There are times when the solution to the problem just comes from diagnosis. Now you know what the pain is, and a proper interpretation or perspective to that pain just gives you peace. For example, you don't know why you are losing sleep through the night, or you are suffering from insomnia, you are moody, you are depressed. Could it be the phone, the blue screen that you have been working on back to back, 24 hours of the day? Could that be what has caused serotonin over-release to a point where you now have this negative feedback of mood swings, such that a few days away from your phone will just lighten your mood? Or could it be that it's just something physiological? For example, the women, we have 4 seasons every month. Could it be that what you feel is actually that season? Just knowing that this is what it is just gives you peace, and you literally skip away happily knowing that it is not as bad as it is. Or you're going through a season where you need to put in a lot of labor and it's taking your time, it's engaging you emotionally, engaging you in every way, energy-wise, kind of draining. By the time you're able to identify what it is, you can develop coping mechanisms to go through that season. So diagnosis at times would actually be the key to therapy. There are times when diagnosis isn't sufficient. You need to interpret very clearly what it is, particularly when the diagnosis indicates that there is a danger. And in this case, it's not enough to diagnose. You need to pick out the offending issue amidst a bunch of other issues. All right? For example, a lady who gets married, I gave that example, previously. So a lady who gets married, and she's wondering why she's hostile to her husband. She's wondering why she's treating her husband a certain way. She has tried, she has apologized, but she has not been able to get rid of that problem. Chances are that she came in aggressive. She came in fighting someone else's battles. She came in with trauma. There's something called post-trauma. She came in with pre-trauma. That is, she witnessed another woman going through something and she told herself, I am not going to allow any husband do this to me. And so she gets into marriage. The moment the husband is laying a demand on her for something, she doesn't even know the details yet. She sees red already and she's charging at it. And she's wondering why she's behaving that way. Interpretation would greatly help. This is why you are acting this way to your husband. I once listened to a story from a mentor in marriage counseling, who shared this story of a man who, it's as though anytime the wife wanted to say something, he would react so violently. He said he reacted so violently in his office, he told his wife to go out and asked him, why are you acting this way towards your wife? By the time they began to dig deeper, they realized that he had suffered childhood trauma. And every feature, the image of the persons who had inflicted trauma was one. It was female. His aunts, his cousins, And so by the time, even though he was now a child of God, as a man, when he was going to get married, somewhere in his head, he had developed an aggression against the female gender. Even though he got married, he does not want to listen to his wife. You can imagine. It takes a lot of self-reflection to pull out that problem in the midst of other issues. There are times where you have a mix of issues. You have fear, you have anxiety, you have regret, and even the individual cannot pick out, in particular what the matter is. Interpretation, and at this point, if you feel you're going through anything of that nature, it's okay to see a counselor and ask questions. Many times, a counselor, in a conversation with a counselor, serves like a bounce off, of your thoughts. Like an echo. It just echoes by. You'll be like, oh, like that light bulb moment. So this is what the matter is. All right? So it's important. It's important. Interpretation could also bring you to a place where you find closure to an experience that hurt you deeply. I have an example here in my notes. A parent-child conflict many times could be a reflection of the parents who did the best they knew, or didn't know better, or were too helpless to do otherwise. Some children were forced to study a course because their parents thought it was the best, and then the child struggled through school, and they said they refused to forgive their parents. But by the time they sit down, an interpretation, by the help of a counseling professional, they are able to see that, oh, in all of it, my parents really just wanted the best for me. That was why they wanted me to study medicine. Or that was why they insisted I should study engineering. They had seen other people, or they had suffered because they just picked some nominal courses. And they decided, no, my children will study professional courses so that they can stand on their own, regardless of the economic climate of the country. By the time you see that, or by the time you see that, okay, your father who hurt you, who was abusing you, physically beating you, was probably going through his own struggles. He himself was wounded. He was injured. His inner child was crying, needing help. There is a way it just gives you peace. Rather than feel angry towards such individual, you begin to be compassionate. You feel compassionate, and you feel compassion, and you feel pity for such persons. There's a way it just changes perspective for you. So how do we treat? We've talked about diagnosis. We've talked about interpretation. There are times when, to respond to the problem, you will need to take certain steps. You will need to take definite steps to ensure that that pain does not persist. In some cases, interpretation brings closure. In some cases, there is a need for you to rework your mindset, to change your mind, the way you are thinking. In some cases, we need to remove the offending event or the offending feature that is generating such pain. And this will be the beginning of our conversations in the next video. I hope this has blessed you. All right, so stay tuned. We will be answering a couple of questions from our anonymous platform.